Listen to the slow breath of the delta. Water slips past the reeds. Buffalo lift their heads from mirrored paddies, and wooden boats nudge one another like patient animals at a ford. Somewhere under this quiet surface lies a kingdom the world nearly forgot. They called it Funan, a name kept alive in old Chinese notes, in beads turned up by farmers' plows, in fragments of terracotta roof tiles and bronze bells, in the faint outline of man-made channels cutting ruler straight lines through wetlands. This is not a story of mountain citadels. It's a story of water and timing, of pilots who knew the color of depth, of scribes who weighed pepper and signed seals, of a place that learned to listen to the monsoon and make it pay rent. Tonight, we'll drift back to early centuries of our era, to Ok Eo's humming markets, to a love legend between a Brahmin stranger and a serpent princess, to the blue-gray mornings when fishermen pushed off before dawn, and to the quiet genius of canal makers who stitched a region together. Settle in, breathe with the tide, and let the river remember for us. Take a map of today's southern Vietnam and Cambodia. Trace the Mekong as it splays into many fingers. Then draw a web between those fingers. That web, 2,000 years ago, was Funan. It wasn't one capital perched on a hill. It was a network. Raised towns, warehouse mounds, causeways, dock basins, all connected by canals and natural channels. The calendar here was written by wind. From the west, the summer monsoon blew sailors across the Bay of Bengal, from India to the peninsula. In winter, the winds flipped, sending ships back again. Funan sat at a hinge of these movements, far enough inland for calm water, close enough to the sea for quick access, rich enough in rice and fish to feed strangers, disciplined enough to tax them without scaring them away. Control the pilots and the tide gates. You control the story. That was the trick. Not big walls, but trustworthy logistics. A sailor wants 3 things: safe anchorage, clean water, honest scales. Funan learned to offer all 3 with a smile, a stamped seal, and a receipt tucked into a bamboo tube. Every kingdom keeps a legend like a house keeps a key, and Funan's key is a marriage. Old chronicles tell of a Brahmin named Kaundinya, a ritual specialist and traveler who arrived by sea with sacred authority. Here he met Soma, a queen of the waters, sometimes pictured as a Naga princess, half woman, half serpent, rooted in the Delta's spirit. They wed, and the realm was born, a union of foreign rights and local power, of ocean and river, of script and mud. Is it literal? Maybe not, but legends tell truths sideways. This one whispers that ideas flowed with cargo, Sanskrit terms, Hindu and Buddhist ceremonies, concepts of dharma and kingship, astronomical calendars, law and writing. These didn't replace local ways. They wove into them. A fisherman still watched the tides. A mother still steamed rice. But the ruler now sponsored shrines, appointed priests, issued orders with imported words that locals pronounced in their own voices. Kaundinya and Soma, 2 currents meeting, becoming one river. Follow a muddy track to a low-rise called Ok Eo. Today, it looks like fields under a wide sky, but close your eyes, and the market wakes. There's a saltfish seller arguing in good humor, a boy carrying coconuts, a monk tracing characters on palm leaf, a woman weighing peppercorns on a bronze scale. In the sheds behind them, molds for gold jewelry sit near piles of glass beads. Indian fineware rests beside local pottery. Shells from far coasts wait to become inlay. Dawn fog lifts. Boats nose in. Skippers shout greetings to pilots who can thread the narrowest cut. Tax clerks chalk tallies on wooden boards. Dock workers roll jars of oil and resin off the gangplank. Archaeologists would later find coins from the far west, ornaments and seals that prove Ok-Io was no backwater. It was a hinge, a marketplace for monsoons, a warehouse for ambitions. Ships came with one wind, weighted with stories and repairs, and left on another wind with rice, resins, woods, honey, and maybe, tucked deep in a sailor's chest, a little charm bought at a shrine, for luck on the open sea. So how do you rule a place that floods twice a day? You measure, you dredge, you schedule, and you bless. Funan's rulers, names like Fan Shaiman appear in Chinese accounts, ran a delta mandala, influence strongest at the ports and canal junctions, fading gently into outlying rice lands where local chiefs kept order but sent rice, men, and courtesy to the center. The crown's power looked like practical kindness, harbor safety, fair weights, stored grain for bad seasons, canals cleared after floods, and it sounded like ritual. Vishnu and Shiva honored, the Buddha welcomed, local spirits propitiated. Religion stitched the net together. A shrine at the dock promised cosmic order. An inscription granted titles to loyal chiefs. Scribes recorded dues in a script whose letters had just begun to settle into local hands. The army? Mostly riverine. Fast boats with spear racks. Shielded crews. Perhaps a few elephants carefully walked along raised levees in the dry season. But the real weapon was information. Who owes what when the tide turns? Which rival port just deepened its channel? With that, you could win a conflict before a spear left its rack. Here's the least glamorous, most powerful magic in the story: digging. Long, straight canals stitched wetlands to higher ground, connected interior towns to tidal mouths, drained fields just enough for rice, and gave the boats a shortcut when the river snaked too slowly. A canal is a promise. It promises that soldiers can move even in the wet season, that farmers can plant when they must, that traders can reach the sea before the wind changes. Picture a line of laborers knee-deep in cool brown water, baskets passing hand to hand, a foreman's chant keeping the rhythm, children bringing tea, an old woman laughing at the foreman and getting away with it. When the cut finally meets the tide, a small ceremony, incense, a coconut split, water let through like a blessing. After that, the canal becomes a habit. Boats learn it, birds nest along it, villages sprout by its banks, and the king's scribe notes that tax revenue ticked up again. That's how empires happen in flat countries, one ditch at a time. Funan thrived because it looked outward without losing itself. To the west, Indian ports traded cloth, beads, metalwork, and ideas. To the north, Chinese buyers wanted aromatics, exotic woods, tortoiseshell, and reliable pilots. To the south and along the peninsula, other ports, future rivals and future friends, watched the same sky and listened for the same winds. Envoys set out with gifts and letters, seeking recognition, seals, the polite fictions that make trade smoother. Sometimes ships met as friends, ropes thrown, jokes traded, meals shared on deck. Sometimes they met as competitors, racing a tide gate, undercutting a price, or flashing spear points at a narrow bend. But the strictest rival was always the calendar. Miss the monsoon window, and you are stuck for months eating your profits, sail too early, and the sea teaches you humility. Funan's advantage was not secret weapons, it was predictable service. When traders said "Ok Ao," they meant safe harbor, honest scales, a pilot who knows the sandbars by heart. Reputation is a currency, and Funan minted plenty. Empires are built from ordinary mornings. Dawn. A stilt house glows with cooking fire. Water laps beneath the floor. A child peers through bamboo slats at boats gliding past like slow birds. Father carries a net. Mother rinses rice. Grandma counts beads for a trader's bracelet. A cousin hammers bronze while another twists fibers into rope. The day hums with useful noise. Looms clicking, pestles thumping, the soft slap of wet wood as a boat nudges the landing. At noon, shade, tea, and gossip. At evening, incense at the house altar, a little offering at the riverside shrine, flowers, a coin, a whispered wish that the flood not be too high this year. Clothes are simple but bright. Patterns echo water and scale. Silver rings shine in sun. People know the river's moods like they know each other. Who is kind, who haggles too hard, who sings when they've had a cup too many. This is how a delta makes citizens, through shared tides, shared work, shared stories. You don't need marble to make a civilization. You need rhythm, somewhere in a shaded courtyard. A teacher smooths sand and scratches characters with a stick. A boy repeats sounds. A girl hides a giggle and then repeats them perfectly. Scripts travel with traders, and then they settle. Sanskrit words for ritual and law sit beside local terms for fish, mud, and storms. A copperplate charter grants a village the right to collect tolls at a canal gate. A stele praises a ruler as just and generous. Palm leaf manuscripts talk of merit and fate. The temple is modest, no skyscraper spires yet, but the ideas are large. Vishnu holds a conch and a mace. Shiva dances in fire. The Buddha sits with steady hands, and local river spirits smile at all this fuss and accept their share of incense anyway. Belief does a quiet job here. It says, the world has an order. It tells a merchant that fair scales are sacred, a ruler that generosity returns in this life and the next, a pilot that a prayer to the river never hurts, and it gives people a way to remember themselves, in words that outlast roofs and baskets. Success attracts attention. Upstream chiefs notice that the delta is getting rich. Peninsular ports sharpen their practices. Envoys whisper that so-and-so promised lower duties this season. Meanwhile, the land itself never sits still. Sediment moves, channels shift, a canal silts up. A flood bites through a levee and redraws a village's front yard. A clever ruler anticipates, sends crews to deepen the cut, offers tax holidays to keep merchants loyal, marries into an upstream family to lock in grain shipments. But cleverness tires, especially across generations. A child ruler inherits a complicated map. Ambitious nobles tug at loose threads. A drought year exposes the cracks. A rival port boasts a deeper anchorage and newer warehouses. Sometimes a realm fades because it's defeated. Other times because it's copied too well. Funan taught the region how to run on water. And soon the region ran, everywhere. By the 6th and 7th centuries, forces upstream, later called Chenla in Chinese sources, rose closer to inland routes and resources. Their centers sat where rivers are narrower, easier to command by levee and fort, and where influence could extend over plateaus and forests beyond the delta's easy reach. trade too diversified. New harbors along peninsular coasts matured. Pilots who once swore by Ak-Ao found competitive wages elsewhere. Did floods damage Funan's canals? Did court factions stall repairs? Did rivals simply master the same playbook? Likely, it was all of that, plus the stubborn truth that no polity holds the tide forever. Yet decline is not disappearance. Scripts, rituals, administrative habits, a feel for logistics, all seeped upriver and sideways into new courts. When later kingdoms rose, they did so on foundations Funan helped lay. Canals as arteries, ports as hearts, diplomacy as breath. Walk the fields near Ak-Ao today, and you see a level world under a generous sky. But a drone survey draws faint lines that refuse to be natural. Shards glitter after rain, and museum cases in nearby towns hold seals, beads, and little gods that once sat on little shelves. Farmers talk about turning up old things. Children make marbles of ancient glass. And a researcher, squinting at a worn coin, smiles because the past just winked. Funan's greatness wasn't a single monument. It was a system: timing, storage, pilots, paperwork, and faith. Repeated until it became a habit powerful enough to outlast names. Call it Southeast Asia's first empire if you like, not because it conquered everyone, but because it connected everyone who wanted to move, trade, and believe together. It made the monsoon dependable, which is a kind of miracle. If you've ever waited for a change of wind, literal or metaphorical, you know this lesson. You can't command the monsoon, but you can read it. You can't stop the flood, but you can cut a channel and arrive dry. Funan did not shout, it listened. It watched the water for color changes that meant depth, watched clouds for tilt that meant rain, watched people for moods that meant trust. In those patient observations, a kingdom emerged, and when it faded, the habit of watching remained. In fishermen, in traders, in rulers who learned to measure before they declared. Before we end, spare a thought for the ones history rarely names. The canal diggers whose shoulders ached for weeks. The scribes who copied contracts until the oil lamp guttered. The mothers who balanced trade, temple, and toddlers. The pilots who slipped through a fog so thick they could only hear the bank. The dock workers who knew every bad knot in every old rope. They made Funan, one reliable act at a time. Empires of water don't leave tall shadows, they leave channels. And the channels belong to everyone who uses them, not just the person who paid for the first shovel. So we end where we began, at waterline. Lanterns bob along a black canal, voices soften as boats loosen their knots. The night smells of rice steam and wet wood. A pilot taps the gunwale twice. A clerk rolls a seal into a cloth. Someone laughs at a joke older than any king. The boat slides away, and the wake writes a fleeting script on the surface. A message that says only this: everything moves, and everything returns. Breathe in. Breathe out. Let the river keep speaking, because in its patient syllables, Funan still tells its story, again and again.